Right. So much of the studies of the chapters and all you have done, but now when you have to actually put it to use, a wonderful way to check that how much it is ready to use, but how much are you able to put it to use is by looking at the questions which have been asked in the past exams. And then when you look at the size of the questions, you are like, seriously, oh my God, this is the size of the question which I need to read in the exam, and then accordingly think of what the content in the answer is required to be written and so it's literally like sharpening your edge. It's like giving the finishing touch to your preparations when we look, and it's also a reality touch regarding what I am preparing and what actually is the level of expectations of the ICAI when we look at the questions which have been asked in the past exams. Okay, right, so let's have a look at the questions which have been asked in the September 25 exams for CA final audit. Munir and Company is a practicing chartered accountant having its head office at Mumbai. A dedicated and capable article assistant associated with Munir and Company for the past 3 years, recently qualified as a chartered accountant. Wonderful. Recognizing his strong analytical skills, attention to detail, and in-depth understanding of audit, the firm inducted him as a partner on 1st February 2025. On joining the firm, he accepted his first assignment to act as EQCR. So, article to partner, partner to EQCR for J&J Limited, a listed entity for 25. Before finalizing the balance sheet of the company for 25, CAA signed on few working papers of the engagement team as a token of review performed by him in terms of the firm's policy on EQCR without going through the audit file. Oh my God. He made no further documentation, assuming that the team who had performed the audit of the company for 25 was the same team who performed the audit of the company for 24. Comment on the act of CAA in accordance with the relevant professional standards, right? So without going through the audit file, no further documentation was made by the chartered accountant over there, right? The recently qualified chartered accountant over there, right? So now over here, review of the audited financial statements. Again, your answer, two golden words in the answer to begin with, as per. Right, so this is a question from the SQC1. So as per SQC1, quality control for firms that perform audits and reviews of historical financial information and other assurance and related services engagement. So that would fill like 3-4 lines in your answer. EQCR is a partner, right? Other person in the firm, right, should be a member of the ICAI, suitably qualified external person or a team made up of such individual. In this regard, suitably qualified external person refers to an individual outside the firm with the capability and competence to act as an engagement partner. For example, a partner or employee with appropriate experience of another firm. In addition, the EQCR for an audit of the financial statements of the listed entity is an individual with sufficient and appropriate experience and authority. So SAEA, sufficient appropriate experience and authority to act as an audit engagement partner on the audit of the financial statements of the listed entity. So this is regarding who can be an EQCR. Now, in the given case, Munir and Company admitted Mr. A, who was an article assistant for 3 years as a partner on 1st February after he qualified as CA. He was appointed as EQCR for JJ, a listed company. It may be considered that CAA has recently qualified as a chartered accountant and he does not possess the competence and capability for the work assigned. Therefore, it is not appropriate for CAA to accept the assignment of the EQCR. Okay, then further the EQCR shall document for the audit engagement reviewed the procedures required by the firm's policy on EQCR. Have they been performed? EQCR has been completed on or before the date of the auditor's report. The reviewer is not aware of any unresolved matters that would have caused the reviewer to believe that the significant judgments the engagement team made and the conclusions they reached were not appropriate. In the given situation, there are no working papers to show that the EQCR has done an evaluation of the conclusion reached by the engagement team. Mere signing on some working papers of the engagement team shows that the EQCR has made no such evaluation and the review of the work performed by the engagement team. In view view of the above, Act of CAA, only signing a few working papers is not correct, and he shall maintain the documentation in accordance with the EQCS. Right, so that is one answer given from the perspective of the SQC1, and they have given an alternative solution over there as per SA 220, quality control for an audit of the financial statements. EQCR shall perform an objective evaluation of the significant judgments made before issuing the report, right, before the auditor's report is issued. And this evaluation shall include discussion of significant matters, review of financial statements and the proposed auditor's report, review of selected audit documentation relating to significant judgments the team made and the conclusion it reached, evaluation of the conclusions reached in formulating the audit report, and the consideration of whether the audit report is appropriate. For the audit of financial statements of the listed entity, EQCR on performing the EQCR shall also consider whether audit documentation selected for the review reflects the work performed in relation to the significant judgments made and support the conclusions reached. Further, the EQCR shall document for the audit engagement reviewed the procedures, whether they have been performed, then whether EQCR has been completed on or before the date of the report, and the reviewer is not aware of any unresolved matters. So this is similar to what content we saw in the SQC1 answer also. In the given situation, there are no working papers to show that EQCR has done an evaluation of the conclusions reached by the engagement team. Mere signing on some working papers of the engagement team shows that EQCR has made no such evaluation and review of the work performed by the engagement team. In view of the above, Act of CAA, only signing a few working paper is not correct, and he shall maintain the documentation in accordance with the SA 220. Okay, right, so probably now that it's good, just we need to develop the skill of writing the answers. So just imagine, like, had you been writing this particular attempt and this question had come in your exams, how you would have articulated your answer. What is the 1.5 page or the 1 page answer which you would have written for this? Do that reality check, do that writing practice, have that realization, that stucking point in you, okay, wherein you are actually not able to know what to write for them. And that is something which will provide you the opportunity for the growth, for the learning curve over there. Okay, right, so that's the first question. Now let's look at the question number 1B. Suba is a senior partner in a CA firm in Mumbai. She and few other CA firms, each specializing in different sectors, agree to form a network to enhance their service portfolio and geographical reach. They apply to the ICAI for the network's name approval, which is granted as Suba and affiliates. They are under the process of submitting relevant forms to the ICAI for registration. Simultaneously, RS and Associates, one of the member firms in the group, signs a collaboration agreement with an international accounting network based in Singapore. Based on the above facts, you are required to guide Suba and RS and Associates with regard to the guidelines for networking issued by the ICAI in respect of the registration of the network with entities in India and outside India. Right, so that is a question regarding the networking guidelines. Right, so again, an unexplored area where a question was never asked by ICAI before. Right, they asked a question regarding the name of the network in the MCQ, that and affiliate, but here the question regarding the registration of the network in India and also outside India. So it says an application for approval of the name of the network has to be made to the institute in Form A. Institute shall approve or reject and intimate the same to the network at its address mentioned in Form A within a period which shall not be later than 30 days from the date of receipt of the form. After the name of the network is approved as per the provisions under Guideline 5, the institute shall reserve such name for a period is 3 months from the date of the approval. The network shall get itself registered with the institute by applying in Form B. So first you apply for the approval of the name of the network in Form A, then register the network in Form B. Within a period of 3 months, failing with the name assigned shall stand cancelled on the expiry of the said period. Registration of the network with the ICAI is mandatory. If different Indian firms are networked with a common multinational accounting firm, they will be considered as a part of the network. Right, so this is for networks within India. Now outside India, the duly authorized representative of the Indian member firm member constituting the network with entities outside India shall file a declaration with the institute in Form D for listing of such network within 30 days from the date of entering into the networking arrangement. So first you enter into the arrangement, and then within 30 days you give a declaration to ICAI. Proprietary, individual members, partnership firm, as well as members in LLP or any such other entity of members as may be permitted by the Act shall be permitted to join such network with entities outside India, provided that the proprietary, individual member, partnership firm, as well as the members in LLP or any other such entity of members are allowed to join only one network, and firm having common partners again will join only one such network. Okay, right? And then they've not given in the context, in the given case, the Suba and company, and then the other firm over there, right? That has not been addressed. They've directly given just the theory context over there, right? So CA Suba and also RS and Associates. So it's like, just with respect to guidelines for networking issued by ICAI. So guide them with respect to the guidelines for networking issued by ICAI in respect of the registration of the network with entities in India and outside India. Right? So pure theory based, content based, fact based answer has been given over there. Okay, right, coming to question number 1C. So, in case if you've written your exams in September 25 and you've called back your paper from the ICAI, and now we are having a look at the suggested over here. So, you just compare what answer you have written, what is the answer given in the suggested, and so. Okay, AZ Industries Limited, an Indian pharmaceutical company having its corporate office in Mumbai, is engaged in developing, manufacturing and globally marketing a broad range of pharma products. During the year 24-25, in pursuit of companies' R&D drive for developing their core product portfolio, two companies, KK Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary company, and OP Limited, a jointly controlled entity, were amalgamated with AZ Industries Limited. PPP and Associate Chartered Accountants are the principal auditors of the company. Audit of KK Limited and OP Limited was conducted by the respective auditors of those companies. The CFS of AZ Industries Limited consists of financial statements and financial information of both these companies to whom CARO 2020 is applicable. The auditors of the said companies have given qualification in their CARO report on the standalone financial statements for 24-25 as under. Immediately you should be able to sense or remember clause 21 of the CARO CFS and a consolidated financial statements. In respect of the KK Limited, its auditor have qualified clause 15 of the CARO, since the company has not complied with the provisions of 192 while entering into the non-cash transaction. And in respect of the OP Limited, being jointly controlled entity, its auditor has made the adverse remark in clause 9A, since the company has defaulted in the repayment of loans to the bankers. In respect of AZ Industries, the principal auditor has given adverse remark in the standalone financial statements of the company in respect of clause 1C, that title deeds of immovable properties are not in the name of the company. Engagement partner CAP is in the process of finalizing the consolidated audit report. Guide CAP how he will report on the matters stated above in terms of the reporting requirement under para 3 of the CARO 2020. Okay, right. So that's a question on the clause 21 of the para 3 of the CARO 2020, wherein you have to give the details of the company, the relationship, and the paragraph number of the CARO having the qualification or the adverse remark. Okay, right. So clause 21 of the para 3 of the CARO 2020. So again, starting with as per, requires the auditor to report whether there are any qualification or adverse remark by the respective auditor in the CARO reports of the companies included in the CFS. If yes, include the details of the company and the paragraph number of the CARO containing the qualification or the adverse remark. In terms of clause 21, the engagement partner CAP in the consolidated audit report shall provide the details of KK Limited, OP Limited, AZ Industries Limited, and the paragraph number of the respective CARO report containing the qualification or adverse remarks. Accordingly, the text of those paragraph obviously is not required to be reproduced. Since reporting under this clause is only required for those entities included in the CFS to whom CARO is applicable. Qualification adverse remark given in AZ Industries Limited standalone report is also required to be included while reporting on the CFS, in addition to subsidiary company and the jointly controlled entity. In view of the above, for the purpose of reporting the qualification adverse remark, the engagement partner CAP, the principal auditor, may report in the following manner in the consolidated audit report: serial number, name of the company, holding company, subsidiary company, associate, joint venture, that is relationship, and then the paragraph number, the clause number of the CARO report which is qualified or adverse, which contains the qualification or the adverse remark. Right, so AZ Industry, holding company, OP Limited, jointly controlled entity, joint controlled entity, KK Limited, wholly owned subsidiary company, and then clause 1C, clause 9A, and clause 15 of the CARO. Right, so that's the completion of the question number 1, which is compulsory, and answer any 4 from the remaining 5 questions. Okay, right, so now coming to question number 2. AJ Private Limited is a company involved in the business of textile manufacturing and having its office factory at Noida. The business of the company is spread across India. Due to recent fire incidents, the local authority of Noida passed a regulation wherein it is compulsory for any organization in its jurisdictional area to have a valid fire NOC issued by the regulatory authority. You are appointed as the auditors for 25. During initial risk assessment phase, you observed that the company is not in possession of the fire NOC as stipulated by the regulatory authority. You approached those charged with governance regarding this matter and requested them to provide their justification on the same. They are of the opinion that obtaining the fire NOC is outside the purview of the financial statements, hence you are not required to look after this aspect. Okay, so this is where the heartbeat of the question is. What are the auditor's responsibility in relation to compliance with the laws and regulation? Right, so that's a question coming from the SA 250, and as per SA 250, laws and regulations divided into 2. One which have a direct effect, and second the other laws and regulation which may have a material effect on the financial statements in case of the non-compliance. Right, so one, those laws and regulations which have a direct effect, and second the other laws and regulations which do not have a direct effect but may have a material effect on the financial statements in case of the non-compliance. And for the compliance with the provisions of those laws and regulations generally recognized to have a direct effect on the financial statements, for that auditor you should obtain SAAE. And for other laws and regulations which may have a material effect in case of non-compliance, it says auditor you need to perform the specified audit procedures. What are the specified audit procedures? Inquiries of the management and the inspection of the correspondence with the regulatory authority, and the inspection of the correspondence with the regulatory authority. Therefore, auditor should ensure as to whether any penal provisions will be there for non-compliance of such law, and also whether the same has been duly disclosed by the company. If the auditor concludes that non-compliance has a material effect on the financial statements and the same has not been adequately reflected in the financial statements by the company, God is only one, SA 705, he shall express a qualified opinion or an adverse opinion on the financial statements as may be appropriate. Right, so that's a question regarding the other laws and regulations, whether that is also included in the scope of the audit. Okay, question number 2B. F&F Associate Chartered Accountants are appointed as the auditors of TQR Limited, an unlisted company, for the financial year 25. Net worth of the company has remained at 500 crore for the last 2 years. CAF is the engagement partner for the audit of the company. During the audit, CAF became aware of an imminent breach. So, moment I read imminent breach, immediately the bell should be ringing in my mind that it's imminent breach. I read it in the context of NOCLAR, and it's something which is about to happen. Imminent breach of law that would cause substantial harm. Oh my God, this is full wording of NOCLAR. Substantial harm to investors, creditors, employees of the company. He discussed this matter with Mr. X, who was one of the senior most directors of the company and who also happened to be a chartered accountant. He is of the view that it is the responsibility of X, being a senior professional accountant, to respond to such non-compliance of the law. However, X is of the view there is no responsibility casted on him for responding to the aforesaid non-compliance in view of the above. Comment on the contention of Mr. X in terms of the relevant section of the revised code of ethics, and what documentation. Oh my god, so they'd never asked a question regarding the documentation requirements under NOCLAR. So now they've asked that question. Are required to be prepared by CAF regarding non-compliance observed over and above the requirement under the applicable standards on auditing. So question number 2A, SA 250. Then after that, the question regarding the NOCLAR. One question exam, they also asked the question between, difference between NOCLAR versus SA 250. Then a question regarding responding to NOCLAR. Now the question regarding the documentation requirements under NOCLAR. Okay, right. So responding to NOCLAR applicable to professional accountants in service. NOCLAR under the Code of Ethics is applicable for professional accountants in service as well as in practice. Among those in practice, it is applicable to auditors as well as professional services other than audit. It is also applicable to senior professional accountants in service being employees of the listed entity. Senior professional accountants in service include the directors. In the given case, TQR Limited is an unlisted company. Consequently, the provisions of section 260 of NOCLAR is not applicable to Mr. X, who is the senior most director of the company and a chartered accountant. Thus, the contention of Mr. X that there is no responsibility cast on him for responding to the non-compliance is correct. Right, so it is not senior professional accountants of the listed company. Right, for the practicing chartered accountants, there is a different applicability over there. But for employees, chartered accountants in service, it says the senior professional accountants of the listed entity. And here the question says it's an unlisted company. Okay, then documentation requirement in NOCLAR to be prepared by CAF regarding non-compliance observed over and above the requirements under the applicable standards on auditing. How management TCWG have responded to the matter. The course of action the accountant considered, the judgments made and the decisions that were taken having regard to the reasonable and informed third party test, that is the RITP, and how the accountant is satisfied that the responsibility of the public interest has been fulfilled. Right, so how management TCWG responded to the matter, the course of action the accountant considered to be taken having regard to the RITP, and how the accountant is satisfied that the responsibility of the public interest has been fulfilled. Right, so this is the documentation to be kept for the NOCLAR. Okay, right, now coming to question number 2C. LNG Corporation is a government-owned entity, is engaged in operating the liquefied natural gas. The organization recently underwent a compliance audit conducted by the CNAG of India. The audit aimed to assess whether the PSU's financial transaction procurement activities and operations comply with the relevant laws, regulations and internal guidelines. In the context of the above, you are required to explain the concept of compliance audit and its perspective, and what shall be the concern of the auditor when undertaking the compliance audit. Right, so one question from 250, then a question of NOCLAR, and then a question from the chapter of the PSU. In that, the question regarding the compliance audit. Right, so first the meaning of the compliance audit. Compliance audit is an independent assessment of whether a given subject matter is in compliance with the applicable criteria. Right? This audit is carried out by assessing whether activities, financial transactions, information comply in all material respects with the regulatory and other rules which govern the audited entity. Right? Then perspective of compliance auditing. Compliance audit is a part of combined audit that may also include other aspects, and compliance audit is generally conducted again either in relation to the audit of financial statements separately as individual compliance audit or in combination with the performance audit. So which financial audit separately or in combination with the performance audit. And compliance audit is concerned with regularity. Right, regularity, adherence to the subject matter, to the formal criteria emanating from the relevant laws, regulations, agreements applicable to the entity. And second is the propriety, that is the sound financial management and the ethical conduct of the public official. While regularity is emphasized in compliance audit, propriety is equally pertinent in the public sector context, in which there are certain expectations concerning the financial management and the conduct of the public officials. Okay, right, so that's a question from the compliance compliance audit. Again, when we are reading, when you're seeing this particular video, you want to go to the chapter of PSU, see that content over there regarding compliance audit, see exactly what is the content which we have to write, how specifically the wordings are. They are asking the question regarding the perspective of the compliance audit. What are the concerns for the auditor? Right, so if you see it in your text or in the institute study material, you see clearly the content over there given as perspective of compliance audit. Okay. Right. Now coming to question number 3A. CES and Associate Chartered Accountants are appointed as auditors of CFS of King Limited for financial year 25. Pawn Limited, Rook Limited, Bishop Limited, Queen Limited are the subsidiaries of King Limited. The CFS consists of financial statements and financial information of these subsidiaries audited by the other auditors. Such financial statements, financial information and audit reports of subsidiaries have been furnished by management of King Limited to them. Following further information is available in respect of the subsidiaries for the financial year 25. Total asset, total revenue, net cash inflows, Pawn, Rook, Bishop and Queen. One subsidiary company, Queen Limited, is located outside India, whose financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the accounting principle generally accepted under the respective country and which has been audited by the auditor in the respective country under the generally accepted auditing standards applicable. So different accounting framework, different auditing framework. Okay. You are required to draft a suitable paragraph based on the above information to be included in the independent audit report on the CFS by making the necessary assumption. Right? So when few of these subsidiaries have been audited by the other auditors, we need to put an other matter paragraph that out of the above these 4 subsidiaries have been audited by other auditor, which constitutes so much of the asset, revenues and the net cash inflows. And we have considered the reports of the other auditors while preparing our own report. Information to be included in the independent audit report on the CFS when financial statements are audited by the other auditor. In case where the parent auditor is not the auditor of all the component included in the CFS, then as prescribed in SA 706, if the auditor considers it necessary to make a reference to the audit of the other auditors, the auditor's report on the CFS shall disclose clearly the magnitude of the portion of the financial statements audited by the other auditors. This may be done by stating the aggregate rupee amount of the percentage of the total asset, revenue and the cash flows of the components included in the CFS not audited by the parent auditor. It should be included in the other matter paragraph of the independent audit report, and the draft other matter paragraph is given as under. Right, other matter paragraph. We did not audit the financial statements, financial information of 4 subsidiaries whose financial statements include total assets of, total revenue of and net cash inflow outflow for the year ended on that date, right? So net cash inflow outflow, right? So net cash outflow for the year ended on that date, right? So it is net cash outflow, right? So these financial statements and the other financial information have been audited by other auditor, and such financial statements and the other information and their audit report have been furnished to us by the management of the holding company. Our opinion on the CFS so far as it relates to the amounts and disclosures included in respect of these subsidiaries and joint venture, and our report in terms of 143.3 in so far as it relates to the aforesaid subsidiaries is based solely on the report of such other auditors. One subsidiary company, Queen Limited, is located outside India, whose financial information statements, financial information have been prepared in accordance with the accounting principle generally accepted in the respective country and have been audited by the auditors under the auditing standards applicable in the respective country. So both accounting principles also and auditing standards also of the respective country. The holding company management has converted the financial statements of the Queen Limited from the accounting principle generally accepted in the respective country to the accounting principles which are generally accepted in India. We have audited these conversion adjustments made by the holding company management. Our opinions in so far as it relates to the balance and affairs of such subsidiary is based solely on the report of the other auditors and the conversion adjustments prepared by the management of the holding company and audited by us. Our opinion on the CFS and our report on the other legal regulatory requirement is not modified in respect of the matters with respect to our reliance on the work done and the report of the other auditors and the financial statements and the other financial information certified by the management. So look at it, like how drafting you need to know the exact words of what is required to be written in the answer. Right, so that's a question from the chapter number 13 regarding the group audit. Now let's come to question number 3. B. FG and Company Chartered Accountants have been appointed as auditors for 25. During the course of audit, while carrying out the risk assessment procedures and the related activities for accounting estimates. So immediately bell rings of SA 540. Right, for accounting estimates, CAG, the engagement partner, identified provision for warranty as an accounting estimate and considered it to be a significant risk. Right, so provision for the warranty and consider it to be a significant risk. In accordance with 540, explain the matters. At least one question in the exam is there regarding matters or factors that need to be evaluated by CAG, specifically with respect to the estimation uncertainty. Right, so that is a significant risk. So auditor, how did you evaluate, how did you address the estimation uncertainty? Right, that is what the question is about. Right, so matters that need to be evaluated with respect to estimation uncertainty as per SA 540. As per SA 540, auditing accounting estimates including fair value accounting estimates and related disclosures, matters that need to be evaluated by the auditor CAG, specifically with respect to estimation uncertainty for accounting estimates that give rise to significant risk, in addition to the other substantive procedures performed to meet the requirements of 330 RS under. Right, so how does the auditor evaluate the estimation uncertainty? Right, so estimation uncertainty. So as first point over there, how management has considered alternative assumptions, why it has rejected them, and how management has otherwise addressed the estimation uncertainty. So what were the alternative assumptions, how they were rejected, how management addressed estimation uncertainty. Then after that, significant assumptions used by the management, are they reasonable? Then the reasonableness of these significant assumptions. So whether significant assumptions, are they reasonable? Then reasonableness of the significant assumptions used by the management or the appropriate application of the applicable financial reporting framework, the management's intent to carry out the specific course of action, and also the ability to do so. Right, so that's again a very specific question from the essay 540, auditing accounting estimates. Okay, coming to question number 3C. MK Limited, a company engaged in the manufacture of modular furniture, is headquartered at Mumbai. The company is recently listed at the recognized stock exchange in the month of July 2024. CD and Company Chartered Accountants are the statutory auditors of the company for 25. The company has approached the statutory auditor for providing quarterly review report pursuant to the requirement of SEBI to provide quarterly results of the company in accordance with SRE 2410, review of interim financial information performed by an independent auditor of the entity, elucidate the objectives of the engagement assigned by the company to the statutory auditors. So the question is on the objectives of the SRE 2410. Right, so SRE 2410, review of interim financial information performed by the independent auditor of the entity. The objective of an engagement to review interim financial information is to enable the auditor, here because it is the auditor doing the review, so you call him as the auditor, to express a conclusion whether based on the review anything has come to the auditor's attention that causes the auditor to believe that the interim financial information is not prepared in all material respects in accordance with the AFRF. And then we say nothing has come to our attention that causes us to believe that the interim financial information is not prepared in accordance with the AFRF. And for expressing this conclusion, we do the inquiry and perform analytical and the other review procedures in order to reduce to a moderate level of risk of expressing an inappropriate conclusion when the interim financial information is materially misstated. Right, then the objective of a review of interim financial information differs significantly from that of an audit conducted in accordance with the SA. A review of interim financial information does not provide a basis for expressing an opinion. We say audit opinion, but we say review conclusion on whether the financial statements give a true and fair view or is presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with AFRF. A review, in contrast to an audit, is not designed to obtain reasonable assurance that the interim financial information is free from material misstatement. Review mainly consists of the inquiry and the analytical and other review procedures. Inquiry primarily of persons responsible for financial and accounting matters, and applying analytical and other review procedures. A review may bring significant matters affecting the interim financial information to the auditor's attention, but it does not provide all the evidence that would be required in an audit. It does not provide all the evidence that would be required in an audit. Right? So inquiry, analytical, and the other review procedures. Right? So audit, ICAI, ORR. Review, it is mainly inquiry, analytical, and the other review procedures. Right? So that is question number 3. Okay, now coming to question number 4A. TZ and Associates are appointed as the statutory branch auditors of Delhi branch of ABC Bank for 25. So bank audit maybe. CAT is the engagement partner for this assignment. He is verifying the advances and has obtained the list of advances outstanding on 25. On sampling basis, he selected one account of Mr. X who has borrowed 1 crore in the form of housing loan in the year 21-22. The account was operating positively till 24. Since April 2020, the account was often remaining overdue. On 1st October 24, X approached the branch and requested to increase the repayment period and to reduce the rate of interest as he was facing some financial crunch due to certain medical emergency in the family. On 1st November, the branch accepted the proposal of Mr. X and increased the repayment period and reduced the rate of interest. The branch classified the account of X as a standard asset on 31st March 25. CAT insisted the branch manager to classify the account as substandard as on 31st March 25, as there is a change in the terms of repayment. There is a restructuring done. CAT started to draft the memorandum of changes for account of X to be submitted to the branch. The rate of provision for the secured portion of the substandard assets are prescribed by the board of ABC Limited is 20%, whereas the requirement of the income recognition asset classification norm is 15% for the secured portion. In this context, justify the classification insisted by CAT regarding the account of X as on 31st of March and guide CAT in respect of the rate to be applied for the secured portion of the substandard asset while finalizing the memorandum of changes. Okay, so whether the account can be classified as standard, no, restructuring of the account has been done. So though nowhere in the question they've used the word restructuring, but they say increase the repayment period, reduce the rate of interest. Again, increase the repayment period and reduce the rate of interest. So that gives you a sense that they are talking about the restructured advances. Restructuring is an act in which a lender, for economic or legal reasons relating to the borrower's financial difficulty, grants concession to the borrower, right? So it grants the concession to the borrower. It may involve modification of terms of advance, including alteration of the amount of installment, alteration of the repayment period, rate of interest, sanction of additional credit facilities to help in curing the default. Under RBI prudential norm, bank may restructure the accounts classified under the standard, substandard or doubtful category. On restructuring, the account will be downgraded from standard to substandard, whereas NPAs will remain in the same category. Right, so now you go to the content of your textbook and see whether the same golden words have been written over there. And you see that whether in the past, when, or whether, if any, or if yes, then when a question has been asked by ICAI. So who knew that in September 25, this was the question which was going to come in the exam? Okay, in the given situation, CAT selected account of Mr. X, whose account was often overdue since April but did not become NPA. On 1st November, bank accepted his X request to increase the repayment period, reduce rate of interest. Branch classified the account as standard asset. However, T is of the view that the account should be classified as substandard as there is a change in terms of the repayment, right? The terms of payment. This classification insisted by Uncle T regarding the account of Mr. X as on 31st March 25 as substandard asset is correct. Okay. Reserve Bank has prescribed the objective norms for determining the quantum of provision required in respect of the advances. However, those norms should be considered as laying down the minimum provisioning requirement, and wherever a higher provision is warranted in the context of the threats to recovery, such higher provision should be made. Right? In the given situation, CAT drafted memorandum of changes for the account of Mr. X to be submitted to the branch. Rate of provision for the secured portion of the substandard asset prescribed by the the board of ABC Bank is 20%, whereas requirement of IRAC norm is 15%. Since 15% provisioning prescribed by IRAC norm is minimum requirement, therefore rate of provision prescribed by ABC Bank Limited for secure portion of substandard asset as 20% as higher provision is in order. Right, that is an order, right? So that's question number 4A. Now coming to question number 4B. ST and Company Chartered Accountants are appointed as auditors of Hi-Tech Limited, an IT company engaged in providing the diverse range of services like digital transformation, software development and cloud solution. The auditors have to use online means to conduct the audit, okay? Hence, ST and Company decided to go for remote audit technology to obtain audit evidence and perform documentation review with the participation of the management. The audit team got first-hand evidence directly from the IT system as direct access has been provided to them. ST and Company have been developing tailored strategies to ensure that the remote audit meet the requirement and deliver results equivalent to the traditional on-site audit. They are concerned with the confidentiality, security, data protection aspects while conducting the remote audit. Guide them. Right? So again, 100% theory memory based question. And a specific question over there regarding the considerations while conducting the remote audit, talking about confidentiality, security and the data protection. So that's the question from chapter number 12, Digital Auditing Assurance. ST and Company have been developing tailored strategies to ensure that remote audit meet the requirement and deliver results equivalent to the traditional on-site audits. To ensure data security and the confidentiality, access to document sharing platform should be sufficiently restricted and secured by encrypting the data that is shared across the network. So document sharing platform should be restricted and encrypting the data. Then the information once reviewed and documented by the auditor is removed from the platform and stored according to the applicable archiving standards and the data protection requirement. Auditors should take into consideration the legislation regulation which may require additional agreement from both sides, that there will be no recording of the sound and images or authorizations to use people images. Auditors shall not take screenshots of auditees as audit evidence. Any screenshots of documents or records or any other kind of evidence should be previously authorized by the audited organization. In case of accessing the entities IT system, auditors should use the virtual private network. VPN is a service which creates safe and encrypted online connection. It prevents unauthorized users to enter into the network and allows the users to perform the work remotely. Right? So again, a question never asked before, but ribbon cutting ceremony in the September 25 exam regarding the question regarding the considerations for remote audit in the context of the confidentiality, security and the data protection. Okay, right, question number 4C. KLM Chemicals and Paint Limited, a manufacturing company listed on the stock exchange, has committed to enhancing its ESG transparency. Sustainability reporting plays a crucial role in enhancing transparency accountability regarding an entity's ESG performance. The company wants to apply sustainable development in its corporate policy. During the review of its sustainability practices, the management is keen to assess the safety of the product, its quality and labor relation. What should be addressed in the pillar envisaged above? Highlight the various key elements included in this pillar. Right, so they are talking about the ESG, and in the ESG, company wants to apply the sustainable development in its corporate policy, and during the review, management wants to look into the safety of its product, quality and the labor relation. So whether it is environment, social or the governance, here they are talking about the social aspect of the ESG pillar. Right, so generally they were very busy asking the question regarding the 9 principles of BRSR. So little bit off route they went in the September 25 and asked the question regarding the second pillar of the ESG, that is the social. The ESG pillar highlighted here is the social pillar, which addresses the relationship the entity and the reputation it fosters with the people and institution in the communities where they do business and the value chain involved. It further includes the labor relation, diversity and also the Inclusion. The social pillar includes the following elements as under, right? So that is the cool. What is the cool over there? Human capital. Then after that, the stakeholder opposition, social opportunity, and then the product liability, right? So social, we call it as the cool, right? So human capital. So human capital, labor, then labor, health and safety, then human capital, development, and supply chain labor standards, right? So labor, supply chain labor standards, health and safety, and the human capital development. Then product liability, product safety, chemical safety, financial product safety, and then privacy, data security, responsible investment. Right? Then stakeholder opposition, any controversial sourcing, and then social opportunity, that's just access to communication, access to finance, access to healthcare, and opportunities in nutrition and healthcare. Right? So this is 100% a memory based question asked over there regarding the second pillar of the ESG, right? So again, you see a question from remote audit, then a question regarding the social from the ESG, and then a question from the bank audit over there. Right, so look at the combination, chapter number 4A, chapter number 12, and then after that the chapter number 18 regarding the ESG SDG assurance. Okay, right, coming to the next one, question number 5. Gold Opportunities Fund is in the business of mutual fund and has prepared the financial statements for 25. These financial statements have been audited by SH & Company Chartered Accountants, and the audit report issued is unqualified. The company has also prepared a scheme-wise summary of its financial performance for the stakeholders. The management of Gold Opportunity Fund further engages SH & Company to perform an engagement to report on the abridged financial statements derived from the audited financial statements pursuant to SEBI regulation and in accordance with the format prescribed by SEBI. Describe in detail the nature of the procedures that would be performed by SH & Company under the relevant standard on auditing to provide an opinion on the abridged financial statements. Right? So procedures of SA 810. Engagement to report on the summary financial statements. So again, it starts with as per SA 810, engagement to report on summary financial statements. The nature of procedures to be performed by the auditor are given below. Right? So one, check whether the summary financial statements adequately disclose their summarized nature, adequately disclose the summarized nature, adequately disclose the applied criteria. Right? Then after that, whether it is prepared in accordance with the applied criteria. Right, prepared in accordance with the applied criteria. Then whether in the summary financial statements it is given from whom or where the audited financial statements are available, unless law regulation says that they need not be made available. Then are they really available where they are said to be made available? Are the audited financial statements available to the intended users without undue difficulty, unless law regulation says that they need not be made available? And then you check whether the summary financial statements, whether they agree with the information given in the audited financial statements. So compare the summary financial statements with the related information in the audited financial statements to determine whether summary financial statements agree or can be recalculated from the information in the audited financial statements, and check whether the summary financial statements are at an appropriate level of aggregation so as not to be misleading in these circumstances. Right? So again, a complete pure theory memory based question. The procedures to be performed for an engagement to report on the summary financial statements. Wonderful. Question number 5B. ABC Limited is in the business of manufacturing of iron ore and steel bars since last decade. The company is having its registered office in Mumbai and factory in Bhiwandi. R and Associates are appointed as the auditors of the company for 25. While going through the trial balance of the companies, they observed that the company has 50 customers and 40 vendors. They requested the company to authorize them to send the external confirmation to few of its customers and the vendors, so SA 505. The company immediately provided them an authority letter to send the external confirmation to their customers and vendors. Auditor sent the positive confirmation request to top 3 customers and top 3 vendors. After 2 days of sending positive confirmation request, the management of the company handed over to them the duly signed response received from the respective customers and vendors to whom they had sent the confirmation request. How come management It should be directly received by the auditor. Now it is received through the management, so less reliable. Okay, how would RN Associates proceed to deal with the situation as per the auditor? As the auditor of the company. Okay, so reliability of external confirmation as per again SA 505, external confirmation states that if the auditor determines that the response to a confirmation request is not reliable, auditor shall evaluate the implications on the auditor's assessment of RMM, including the risk of fraud and the nature, timing and extent of the other audit procedures. The same thing we do when even we come to know that the management's refusal to allow the auditor to send a confirmation request. Impact of management's refusal on the auditor's assessment of RMM, including the risk of fraud and the nature, timing and extent of the other audit procedures. SA 500, principles useful in assessing the reliability of audit evidence. VIDCO, audit evidence indicates that even when audit evidence is obtained from sources external to the entity, circumstances may exist that affect its reliability. All responses carry some risk of interception, alteration or fraud. Such risk exists regardless of whether a response is received in paper, electronic or other medium. Factors that may indicate doubt about the reliability of the response include: was received by the auditor indirectly or appear not to come from the original intended confirming party. So receive indirectly or you don't think it has come from the original intended confirming party. In the given case, ABC Limited 50 customers, 40 vendors and RN Associates and positive confirmation to top 3. However, after 2 days of sending request, management of the company, this is the climax of the question, handed over duly signed response received from respective customers and vendors to the auditor. Considering the fact that the response was received by the auditor indirectly, it raises question on the reliability of the responses received and indicate a fraud risk factor that requires the evaluation. In view of the above, if the auditor has doubts regarding the reliability of these responses, it becomes necessary to obtain the additional audit evidence to address these concerns. Auditor will also reassess the RMM, including the possibility of fraud, and accordingly design the further audit procedures. Okay, right, coming to the next one, question number 5C. CA Neha, a chartered accountant in practice, is approached by Growtech Limited, a startup company planning to raise capital through IPO. The company requests her assistance in guiding them to the selection of advertising agencies, coordinating with the bankers and brokers to the issue. Besides helping the company as an advisor, she also underwrote the public issue of the company to the extent of 20% at a commission of 1%. She contends that provision of code of ethics are not binding such services. Do you agree with the view of CA Neha? Analyze the facts and give your comments in light of the applicable code of conduct. Right? So what do we say? Can CA go to the pub? We say yes, going to the pub. What do we say? Portfolio management, underwriting, broking services not allowed, but acting as advisor, consultant to an issue. Can CA install AC in his office? Yes, AC allowed, but pub going not allowed. And so the Council of the ICAI, pursuant to section 224 of the Chartered Accountants Act 1949, has passed a resolution permitting a chartered accountant in practice to render the entire range of MCOS. A clause of the aforesaid resolution, what beautiful drafting, allows chartered accountant in practice to act as advisor consultant to an issue, including the preparation of publicity budget, advice regarding the arrangement for selection of ad media, centers for holding conferences of brokers, investors, bankers to issue, collection centers, brokers to issue, underwriters and underwriting agreement, selection of all of these, distribution of publicity and issue material, including application form, prospectus and brochure, and deciding on the quantum of the issue material. It is, however, specifically stated that chartered accountants in practice are not permitted to undertake the activities of portfolio management, underwriting and the broking. In the given situation, CA Neha, a practicing chartered accountant, is helping the company as an advisor, has also underwrote the public issue of the company Growtech Limited, a startup company, to the extent of 20% at a commission of 1%. In view of 224 of the Chartered Accountants Act, contention of Neha that provision of code of ethics is not binding in providing such services is not correct. Accordingly, CA Neha is permitted to provide the service of advisor consultant to the issue as a part of MCOS under 224 of the Chartered Accountants Act. However, Neha would be guilty of professional misconduct under the Chartered Accountants Act for underwriting the public issue of the company. Right, for underwriting the public issue of the company. Right, coming to the last one, question number 6. Yes, 6A. Q is the engagement partner for the statutory audit of Lal Limited. While conducting the audit, he has identified some deficiencies in the internal control. SA 265. Immediately you are able to smell. On further verification of the internal controls of the company, he identifies, he has some indications that significant transactions in which management is financially interested are not being appropriately scrutinized by TCWG, and also in few cases you observe the susceptibility to loss of an asset. Right? So these are indicators of significant deficiency. Transactions in which management is financially interested not appropriately scrutinized, and the susceptibility to loss of an asset. It determines on the basis of the audit work performed that identified deficiencies constitute the significant deficiencies. How and to whom shall CAQ communicate identified significant deficiencies in internal control? What are the matters to be included by CAQ in such communication? So to whom to communicate and what to communicate? Right? So we say UPDSLR. And what are the matters to be? Yes, to what are the contents of the report? Right? So as per again SA 260. 5. Communicating deficiencies in internal control to TCWG and management deals with the auditor's responsibility to communicate appropriately to TCWG and management deficiencies in internal control that auditor has identified in an audit of financial statements. The auditor CAQ shall communicate significant deficiencies in internal control identified during the audit to TCWG on a timely basis in writing. Significant deficiencies. CAQ shall also communicate to management at an appropriate level of responsibility on a timely basis. Auditor shall include in the written communication of significant deficiencies in internal control a description of the deficiencies and their potential effect. Sufficient information so that the users can understand the context of your communication. The purpose of your audit is to express an opinion on the financial statements. Audit includes consideration of internal controls relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the internal control. And the matters being limited to those deficiencies that have been identified during the audit and that the auditor has concluded are of sufficient importance to merit the attention of TCWG. Right, so again 100% a memory based question over there. Right, coming to question number 6B. VPN Limited is a listed entity that prepares quarterly financial statements in accordance with Ind AS. So quarterly, okay, so maybe it is review. Interim financial information. Company has appointed Jack and Company Chartered Accountants as its statutory auditors. During Q2 of 25, Jack and Company undertake a review of VPN's interim financial information in accordance with SRE 2410. Two questions on 2410. Auditor plans to obtain written representations from the management. Management has merely stated that interim financial information is prepared and presented in accordance with AFRF. As an engagement team member, you are required to specify areas that these written representation should cover for the review of the interim financial information. So written representations for the SRE 2410. So as per SRE 2410, review of interim financial information performed by the independent auditor of the entity, specific areas that written representation should cover for the review of interim information are given below. It acknowledges its responsibility for the design and implementation of the internal control. That interim financial information is prepared and presented in accordance with the AFRF. It believes the effect of those uncorrected misstatements aggregated by the auditor during the review are immaterial both individually and in the aggregate to the interim financial information taken as a whole. A summary of such items should be included or attached to the written representation. It has disclosed to the auditor all these significant facts relating to the fraud or suspected frauds known to the management that may have affected the entity. Disclosed to the auditor the results of the assessment of the risk that interim financial financial information may be materially misstated as a result of fraud. It is disclosed to the auditor all known actual or possible non-compliance with the law regulation whose effect are to be considered while preparing the interim financial information. It is disclosed to the auditor all significant events that have occurred subsequent to the balance sheet date and through the date of the review report that require adjustment or disclosure in the interim financial information. Right, so what does it say? It has disclosed to the auditor all of the points, written representations that they have disclosed to the auditor: fraud, suspected fraud, assessment of the RMM for fraud, non-compliance, and also the subsequent events, and internal control, interim financial information, and the uncorrected misstatements are immaterial individually as well as in the aggregate. Right, so that is the written representations of the SRE 2410. And then the question number 6C. Safe Cooperative Bank shortlisted VW and colleague chartered accountant out of the 5 audit firms for assignment of statutory audit for 25. Bank emailed the list of branches to the audit firm along with the maximum fee per branch. Oh, we keep on saying minimum fee has to be quoted in the tender document. Then CA, can you respond to such tender inquiry? Yes. Maximum fee per branch, and requested them to submit the quotation. VW and colleagues responded to the bank and submitted their quotation. Comment with reference to the provision of the Chartered Accountants Act and schedules thereto. So clause 6. As per clause 6 of the part 1 of the first schedule to the Chartered Accountants Act 1949, a chartered accountant in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he solicits client or professional work directly or indirectly by CAPIB, provided that nothing contained herein shall be construed as preventing or prohibiting a chartered accountant from applying, requesting, inviting, securing, arrests, work from another CA in practice, or responding to tenders or inquiries issued by various users of professional services from time to time, and securing professional work as a consequence. However, as per the guidelines issued by the Council of ICAI, a member of the institute shall not respond to any tender issued by an organization or user of professional services in areas of service which are exclusively reserved for chartered accountants, such as audit and attestation service. However, such a restriction will not be applicable where minimum fees of the assignment are prescribed in the tender document itself, or where the areas are open to other professionals along with the chartered accountants. Right? So that is the tender guidelines. In the given case, Safe Cooperative Bank circulated a list of branches to audit firms specifying the maximum fee per branch. In the response, Messrs. VW and colleagues submitted their quotation. As per clause 6 of the part 1 of first schedule to the Chartered Accountants Act and the guidelines issued by the Council of ICAI, such a response is not permitted since the assignment relates to audit services exclusively reserved for chartered accountants, and only a maximum fee, not a minimum, was prescribed. Accordingly, the concerned responsible partner of VW and colleagues, being a chartered accountant in practice, shall be held guilty of professional misconduct for responding to such quotation. What a regular, very well featured question over there. We know this question very popularly, but look at the way in which the answer has been articulated. Do you have that level of confidence कि when this question comes in the exam, this is the level at which I can write an answer in the exam? That is what we need to assess. I know this, okay, that I know that you know it, but how much marks you will be able to fetch, that is something we need to consider. Okay, and the last one. Bill Limited is a company manufacturing premium shampoos since last decade. Company functions through various salesmen appointed across the country. The management of the company came across the news that the salesmen in the central and western regions have exaggerated their sales through fictitious billing to achieve higher commission and to accommodate the sales volume achieved by one employee with other employees who fall short of their target. Management of the company appointed you to investigate and unearth such type of fraud if it is prevailing in their company. What procedures will be followed by you for investigating such type of fraud, right? So that's a question from the chapter of the due diligence investigation and the forensic accounting, right? So procedure to be followed to investigate commission scheme fraud. Right, so before proceeding to investigate the fraud of the type aforementioned, investigating accountant should first ascertain the exact duties of the person who is suspected to have committed a fraud, his relationship to the general routine of the office, business and the circumstances in which any known instances of defalcation have come to light. Then such an inquiry would give a clue to promising avenues of the investigation. Greater the authority of the individual suspected for the fraud, wider would be the field which would have to be covered in the investigation. So first the exact duties of the person, and then the greater the authority of the individual. At times an accountant is also called upon to investigate a suspected fraud, the details of the nature whereof is not known. In such a case, for locating the source of the fraud, the investigating accountant will have to study the financial and accounting structure of the organization. So now you come to know the exact duties. Now you look into the organization structure. Then as a first step, he should examine the line of responsibility between the various members of the staff. He should have a look at the system of internal control and operations for spotting out the weaknesses, if any, that may exist in it. Relying on the above study, he should direct his inquiry towards those aspects of the business wherein he has excessive control, wherein there has been excessive control in the hands of single person employee without any supervision by other employee person, or any other inherent weakness that may exist in the system. Right, so again the exact duties of the person, greater the authority, organization structure, line of responsibility, and where there has been the excessive control. So any other inherent weakness that may exist in the system. Right, so that's the discussion of all the questions which are there in the suggested September 25 for CA final audit. Already a separate video I've already uploaded regarding the MCQ part in the September 25. Signing off, Aarti Lahoti. Bye bye.